Okay, let's see, is everything... It's a lot of things to load here for my poor computer. There we go. Beautiful. Sorry about that. That took a little while for me to get the little Mr. Raccoon to load in. But now that everything is looking perfectly, and we can hear tweets being typed
Yeah, we can
like
hear a
crazy
lot from you, Maya,
in the background.
like I told you.
Which is good.
Maya.
It means we're online on everywhere.
Oh wait, do I want
Yeah.
the camera on?
Yeah, we're already live. So yeah, turn on the camera.
Camera on and keyboard warrior off.
Warrior style off, camera
Yeah.
style on. And good. Welcome everyone. It's so good to see so many of you already in the chat. That's that makes us happy. Today, before
Holy
we start.
shit.
Sorry? What, Otto?
No, there was a lot of people right at the start. I didn't look at the numbers before now.
Yeah.
Welcome everyone.
Welcome.
How great.
Good.
Great success.
Great success. So, I just want to say, first of all, I want to say, if you have not pressed the follow button on Twitch, please do, so we can reach the next milestone. And of course, there's only $15 left to hear Otto do his stupid cring trap. It's pretty cringe.
That's in Swedish though, so.
Yeah, it is in Swedish, but you can hear how bad he sings. So, it's hopelessly bad. And of course, please join us, participate. If you have ideas for shows, if you want to help out, if you want to do something, anything really, apart from giving us shitloads of money. Oh, we got a few new bots right away. Thank you so much. Then please join our Discord server and talk to us. We're always here. I'm posting a link tree there for you. Sorry about the things that some things here are in Swedish, but that's how it's going to be. You're going to get it anyway.
Yeah, probably most. And if you want everything to be in English, just push a lot of English speakers here. Then I can force Kringlan to do everything in English.
Really?
Brute forcing is the way to go.
Yeah. Otto will sit on me if I don't comply.
Yeah, I'm like 3 times your size, so don't worry about that. But we are going on to today's subject, I think, right? Because we have some Finnish pirates and ex-pirates with us today. Otto and Maya, welcome to the Pirat-TV digital studio, I think we can call it, right?
Digital studio.
Hi.
Yeah, that was cringe. And forget I said that.
Boomer digital. They do input-output thing.
Yeah. Why don't we, Maya, why don't you start? Who are you? I said exactly what you drank. Perfect.
Yeah, I really should have gotten that tea before we began. My voice is already failing. Sorry about that. But yeah, my name is Maya Raudaskoski, if you want to try to pause that and look that up somewhere. I'm currently the chair of the Young Pirates of Finland. I'm also sitting on the board of the Young Pirates of Europe, and I'm to some degree involved in the Pirate Party proper here in Finland as well. And I joined the Pirates sometime in very late 2016 and have been pretty steadily involved in the movement in one way or another since then. And what else? I also do most of the international stuff for the Finnish Pirate Party and the Finnish Young Pirates. So, and that's part of the reason why I happen to be here tonight.
Yeah, cool. And Otto, who are you?
Yeah, I'm Otto, and I was a member of the Finnish Pirate Party for 10 years, from 2008 to 2019. So the Finnish Pirate Party was founded in 2008, and then I was one of the founding members. But then last year I switched parties to Finnish Green Party, and we can talk a little bit about that later. But yeah, I know pretty much the history of the Finnish pirate movement, and also by profession I'm also a historian. So
wow, this is exactly why we don't do any research on our guest people. Then you get all these emotions straight away. This is perfect.
Yeah.
So you're a historian. That's awesome. I don't think I've ever met a historian
doing my PhD at the moment.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
so good to be able to do history as a historian, you know? Like, it must make the work a little bit easier. I was there. I'm the source.
Yeah, I'm very objective source in this.
Yeah. But then let's start at that point, since we did get a little bit of warning that Maya has more time than you. So let's start there, because the pirate movement was founded in Sweden. We have talked about that in the previous episode with Christian Engström. And when did it move over to Finland?
Yeah, so early 2006 was when the Swedish Pirate Party was founded, if I remember correctly, and then already in 2006 there was an attempt in Finland to found a party called Information Society Party, and the idea was that the idea came from Sweden, but in Finland they tried to do a more broader agenda, because the original Swedish Pirates agenda was very narrowly about copyright and internet issues and stuff, and the Information Society Party people tried to make a more broad agenda, but the attempt failed. It wasn't really. I mean, it sounds boring as I say it, the name. So there was some problem with that, and they didn't. Well, the attempt basically failed fairly quickly. But then in 2008, spring 2008, there was another attempt to found a pirate party, which was named Pirate Party of Finland, and which basically copied the party platform from the Swedish Pirates, and that was more successful, and it's still going after 12 years.
Oh, okay, cool. So basically, when you guys started, you were pretty much identical to the Swedes.
Yes, it was basically cut and paste, copy and paste deal with just translate into Finnish the party manifesto of the Swedish Pirate Party, and that was basically it. And there was this background of especially tightening copyright legislation, and generally the politicians didn't seem to understand the internet and as a technical and ethical matter, how to deal with it. So basically the same kind of issues that Sweden had at the moment, and an active peer-to-peer file sharing scene also in Finland at that time.
I was just about to ask that about the illegal piracy scene in Finland, if it was as huge as in Sweden, because when I grew up, I mean, you weren't cool if you didn't know how torrents worked. I was one of the earlier and taught a lot of my friends. I was already on Napster when that was a thing.
That was I was 12 when Napster came, and that was the first thing. And then when they shut down Napster by some US court order, that was how I became political, basically at the age of about 13, because I suddenly realized that this global politics now affects my day-to-day activities for some reason. And it was sort of a wake-up call of some kind.
Yeah. And
and there was the sort of Finnish. I don't think the scene was quite well. I think Sweden still had the biggest peer-to-peer file sharing piracy scene, but Finland was fairly big as well, and we had our own Finnish services. One was called FinReactor, which was this direct connect hub that was it went to trial, and there was about 20 people who got convicted because of it, and that was one of the big background cases before the planning of the Finnish Pirate Party.
Cool. And I mean, the Swedish party took they started off with a very, very thin politic, and they grew extremely fast, which grew into a lot of drama and inside intrigues and basically wars, which ended up with Rick leaving and another party leader taking over. Did you get the same evolution on the Finnish side, or did something go different there?
Growth was considerably slower in Finland, which was a blessing in the sense that there really wasn't that much infighting. I think the pirates in Finland, I think, always have had quite peaceful internal affairs compared to. I mean, of course, there's always something going on, but compared to, let's say, other bigger parties in Finland or pirate parties in other countries, I think we're been very peaceful in Finland about that.
Okay. That is a blessing because, it's the same thing that I say when people ask me in Sweden, what's the pirate party going to do if we reach 51%? Well, we're probably going to die. I mean, there's no way we can shoulder complete leadership right now, but we won't get over 10%. I mean, I'm hoping for the 4%. Then we can start doing some change. But let's move on to the history then, and to the things that I still think is what people are wondering. What happened to the Finnish party that made you leave them? Was it the fact that they didn't grow, or what? Where did you fall off?
Yeah, well, because I was present at the founding assembly in May 2008, and I always had the original goal for myself that the Pirate Party should get members elected in the Finnish parliament, and then I watched and participated in 3 parliamentary elections, 2011, 2015, 2019, and this goal still hadn't materialized, even though we tried everything we could with the resources we had. So that's when I just decided that I don't have anything more to give it to this project, and I have done everything I could within the Pirates, and it didn't motivate me anymore. And the other reason was this rise of populist parties and stuff like that. I felt that we shouldn't split the so-called progressive vote anymore. We should sort of join forces with bigger parties. That was my sort of personal idea, but I didn't fall that much. I didn't go that much into different direction because the sort of organization I'm a member of is Finnish Greens for Science and Technology, which was founded slightly after the Finnish Pirate Party was founded as a subsection of Finnish Greens Green Party, which basically, it's basically the sort of people who are interested in science and technology stuff who are members of the Green Party. So it has basically a similar people and people with similar goals in it. So
it sounds like the clout that the Swedish pirates were able to grow on, which were the peer-to-peer massacre, the Pirate Bay trials and stuff like that. It sounds like the Finnish Greens founded that support party and swallowed a lot of the clout that the Swedish were able to capitalize on. It sounds reasonable.
Yeah, and also the protest party attention was going to the populist party through Finns, which happened in Finland slightly before the similar thing happened in Sweden. So it sort of swallowed all the attention, all the public attention. So I'm not comparing our policies, but I'm just comparing that you need to have the sort of media space to grow, and we didn't get that because there were other things that were
there's also I have this I'm not attached to it, but I have this hypothesis that the party was basically founded on the cusp of the big, basically a worldwide recession. So the whole economic crash of 2008. So just before that, there was this, notice, just things were pretty static, and it was enough, pirates were considered radical and flashy enough to warrant attention, and it was a nice thing for all the conservatives and all the the sort of the old power to get mildly upset about and be like, well, who are these guys, and what do they even think they are about, and this is utter nonsense, and so on. But then the whole economic crash happened, and we suddenly had arguably more major issues to worry about in most parts of the world. So it kind of turned the focus of politics back to the more traditional questions, the economy and even the economic system as a whole.
Yeah, and that wasn't really the pirates really didn't have that good answers to that. Yeah, at that point. Yeah, I think I agree with that.
So maybe you could say here, I just want to, so maybe where in Sweden it kind of imploded upon itself, you could say a little bit at that time. You had both a green movement, and I think this is similar in a lot of European countries that are actually a little bit more open to these questions than they are, for instance, are in Sweden. They are a little bit, let's just say, after. Or maybe power hungry could be more correct. And you also had the situation where the populist party started rising much earlier. Because I do understand that's a little bit I mean, I don't like the term, but you could say the crypto-fascists have a tendency to maybe jump that ship, while obviously a lot of people who want to do quicker change can see the possibility of doing that in a more established party. And also, again, just the idea of splitting the vote is problematic, clearly, if you want to drive that type of change.
Yeah, well, when the Finnish Pirate Party was founded, the Green Party had a sort of split in these issues. There were people in the Green Party who were sort of close to pirates in their thinking, and then there were people that were completely opposed to pirates in their thinking, because there are a lot of sort of people working in creative industries and stuff like that are also in the Green Party, and I think there is still a split. There's still these both wings do exist within the Green Party. So, but on the whole, I think the within the Finnish Green Party there has been a sort of generational change within the last 10 years, so that I really couldn't have joined the Greens in 2008, but in 2019 I felt that I don't have to change my opinions in order to join the Green Party.
Okay.
So there was some evolution there, I think.
This is actually something that I'm scared of is going to happen in Sweden. That a lot of the issues that I believe we are the ones talking about, we are not talking loudly enough about them, so that there could be other parties capitalizing on those questions. But yeah.
The whole question about the differences and the extent of difference between the pirates and the Greens is pretty relevant all across Europe, since our greatest success recently in Czechia was basically in Czechia the pirates fill the niche that the Greens do in most other countries. The Greens are sort of bogged down in the whole they were left wing enough, I understand, or are left wing enough in Czechia that they are sort of considered just lumped in together like with the old lefty parties, and they sort of have the communist communist connotation, or like the stamp a stamp of sorts on them, a bit like which is actually carried by the left alliance here in Finland, for instance. So that sort of like made for the opening that the Czech pirates have like capitalized on recently. There just wasn't like this. There wasn't a party for like young-ish, urban, educated people there, and there wasn't a central left option for people just fed up with the system. So yeah. And in addition to that, just the fact that the pirates, even with a huge increase, huge proportional increase we had, or like relative increase we had in the representation in the latest European election, they are still working within the Green Group in the European Parliament. So it's very much a relevant question for us, how to differentiate ourselves, and like whether it can even be done in a meaningful enough way.
But because like one of the things that I see here, and I mean particularly in Sweden you have that situation where the green movement is a power movement. They have been ruling Sweden, and they are, and they will give up on most of their ideals to rule, and they've had a lot of shady positions, over the years, and they're kind of an old party in that way. Like you talk about structurally, they haven't really followed, but I can understand the green movement have moved. But thinking about that, I mean, who is talking about basic income and changing the monetary system into a digital, thinking about a digital economy and all of these things? Are the Green actually having these questions and pushing these questions, like in Finland?
Well, yeah, the Greens have a basic income model, have had a basic income model for, I don't know, 10 years or something. And so
I've heard some people say it
green
was
agenda.
actually like conceived of in the 90s already. They just made updates.
Yeah, might be actually, yeah. But of course, Greens are now part of the coalition government in Finland, and of course other parties in that coalition are less green, let's say, and of course that's causes some people to be disappointed in what the government policies are, because we're still just only a party with about 10 to 12% of the vote, so can't do that, like can't force anything through with that kind of vote share.
But it's interesting to hear, and I think it's to a certain extent it's natural for the Pirate Party in different countries to have an alliance with the Greens, depending on if they actually can push these questions and look forward. In a way, if they are progressive in the sense, are they actually thinking about technology and life, 5 years from now on a wider sense than, end nuclear power, which, like in Sweden we have energy shortages.
Yeah.
Partly because of their policies. It's like,
yeah, I'm completely pro nuclear power, and I think the Finnish Greens for Science and Technology are actually pushing for Europe-wide sort of change in the position of the Greens regarding nuclear power. You can actually follow them on Twitter at Science Greens. So yeah, well that's one thing that has changed. Finnish Greens were completely anti-nuclear power 10 years ago, and now they're not that anti-nuclear power. They're not pro, but the sort of, yeah, that discussion has also changed. This was one of the reasons I felt comfortable joining the Greens.
Yeah, and like the Science Greens have had a pretty substantial role in making that happen. in the Finnish Greens, and yeah, there are lots of just all around good people in there. But the shift sort of in attitude towards nuclear power has like in general been like there's been a shift especially in the past 5 or so years with I'd probably tie it to the increase in like awareness about the climate crisis. So like the realization that we really do need to sort of consider all of our options and not all of our low carbon emission options instead of like holding on to these dogmas from like the past previous century basically. So especially the younger generations, like yes, in the Greens, but even imagine this in the Left Alliance, like young lefties, and left has been like the ultimate bastion of like anti-nuclear on all levels for ages. Even the young lefties like updated their policies recently to reflect that they are sort of like solution agnostic on this. They are not like categorically opposed to nuclear, and specifically like small modular nuclear reactors. And that's pretty amazing, and that means that we basically, I mean, I think we do need to step up our game as pirates regarding the whole climate crisis and the various ecological crises we are facing already and are going to be dealing with for basically the rest of all of our lives. And the shift in like attitudes towards nuclear power is a very clear sign, is maybe the sign that we need to like sort of start updating our sort of policy on the when it comes to energy and like the climate, since it doesn't differentiate us like clearly enough from many of the obvious options anymore.
No, I mean it's interesting. Now, Otto, I'm sorry, but
No,
let me know if you want
to
cut in, because you're saying it. So I mean, obviously the Swedish situation is very different. You have a pretty backwards Green Party, and you have an opportunity for the Pirate Party in Sweden to own these questions in a way if they want to move forward. You know, like, how can we rebuild our infrastructure to allow for future power, and how can we work with modular nuclear power and stuff like that, where no one is really talking about it. But given like a Finnish situation, you kind of asked yourself, and it's cool to have you both there. What do you think in the situation where you're in is the path forward for the pirates? What would you say are the things that you can push, that the pirates can and should push, both from a perspective of the Greens and a perspective of the pirates, if that makes sense?
So this is a thing I've been thinking about a lot since I sort of skipped all of the non-pirate stuff in my introduction, but for the past almost 2 years now, I've also been putting a lot of time into climate issues, environmental issues, climate activism even. I'm involved in the school strike, the main movement behind the school strikes here in Finland, Fridays for Future. And I've also been working as a research assistant and project coordinator in a research project that's looking into like plans for climate mobilization, like emergency decarbonization. So that's I've really been preoccupied with these questions for the past few years. So yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. But yeah, the first and foremost is obviously that the pirates have to like take more of an active and like a broad interest in climate and the environment. And there are some fairly obvious questions where there's like just not much like general discourse. Like the public discourse is still pretty tame and like quiet. For instance, like all this circular economy stuff, which has been every policy wonk across Europe knows about it. It's been a thing in the EU since like the early 2010s at least, I think. And there's been like actual plans and policy programs since at least the previous term in the European Parliament. But still, it's just mostly just a buzzword that gets showcased, at least when it comes to mainstream media and stuff. And it just doesn't mean much for the average person yet. And there are tons of these questions, like similar questions. But going into circular economy, for instance, you're going to find like the questions of open hardware and also software, like planned obsolescence, right to repair. These are all very, very like obviously core pirate issues. They are tied to core pirate issues about intellectual property, both copyright and patents, since there's a lot of like murky water and just broadly undiscussed issues there. And this is just like a very, very thin slice and very, very brief example of all the things we could be like sort of foregrounding. And then when it comes to just the pirates, we can still like this. There still is no like the Greens, partly due to like the influence of Julia Hedda and maybe the previous pirates, like the Swedish pirates back in the day, and now the 4 pirates in the parliament right now. But like the Greens have been most like okay-ish on digital policy issues, but they still like you can't really say in good faith that like they're actually foregrounding these issues or centering these issues in a way. So there's still that opening for the pirates, I think. And just in general, like the question of even the Greens and like the others in the European Parliament who do discuss or make it their thing to bring up digital policy and technological policy questions, they still sort of keep it in this. They still keep to the usual frame of like relegating all of these questions to like experts. There's no there's no active push to like popularize these questions, and that's what we need to do. That's what the pirates movement could, and I think personally should be about in the coming years. Like we need to actually politicize questions of like digital questions, digital regulation, and also like questions of digital and technological policy. Like we have to like destroy this notion that technology and like both digital and like non-digital technology, that they are just this thing that sort of has a life of its own that just develops like out of the like somehow outside or independent of like the rest of society, like independent of human society. Like nothing could be further from the truth. And that's why I think we should be like politicizing these questions. And I get stuck on this and keep rewinding and restating the point, since historically there has been a kind of a tendency in some issues at least, or sort of a reflex in many pirate circles to sort of denounce like the politicization of questions, like sort of a technocratic bent, I think, an idea of like, it's not been an idea of like this should be a bigger question. It's been more there's been an undertone of we just like everything in general is, most things are fine, but we just need a couple of people who understand technology inside the system who can make it all right. And that's like clearly, obviously, just not enough on its own.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of political parties are working like companies did in the 90s, where they have like we'll talk to our digital department. And you go like, there's an IT department over there. And you're like, but it's fundamental for everything that you do.
Exactly.
You have information everywhere.
Yeah. So regarding the original question, when policy-wise and in terms of popularization of these topics, I think there is of course room for pirates, but in terms of electoral success, I think that's more difficult because, and I think that's the really sort of question that pirates should be asking in Finland is that do they really want to get elected to office, or do they just want to participate in the discussions through participating in the elections without real possibility to get elected? I mean, both are. I mean, both are like options, and if people are motivated enough to just raise the discussion and not get elected that much, I mean, that's fine. But so yeah, in terms of discussion, there's definitely room for the pirate point of view.
I actually agree with that. I actually agree with most of what Otto just said. I think that like electoral politics and parliamentary decision making is like the cycles, like the progress is very, very slow, and there's the popular like 10 or 12 or 15 year time frame that gets quoted when it comes to climate issues. And yeah, even if we go for, I don't know, the 12-year frame, that means we have like a maximum of like 3 terms, electoral terms, depending a bit on whether you're talking European level or national level. We just don't have all that many election cycles and electoral terms left. And that means we absolutely, like, if any movement, like whether it's a party in parliament or outside parliament, or whether it's, even if it's not a party at all, anyone who's trying to angle for, like, who's trying to get anything done or accomplish anything, get any kind of progress, induce any kind of progress in any critical or major political question, is going to have to seriously review like the ways they organize and the ways they are like going about their business in general, the ways they are trying to push their agenda, since we're running out of time, and like the parliamentary route isn't going to, like, these institutions alone are not going to save us. And frankly, most of the current like people in power, like the mainstream politicians, like those people are definitely not going to save us. So we have to. I personally view running for councils or for parliament. I view it as just an opportunity to get your views out there, to participate and get people to hear you out. It's just like one part of the thing you're going to be doing. Getting elected is going to happen if it happens, but like especially in this current situation, and maybe in general, if you consider the pirate like the pirate movement in Finland, it's probably not a good idea to maximize for electability. It's not even good for getting elected, I think. We've seen that recently. We've seen that in the past couple of elections here.
Yeah, and I kind of want to, because I mean, there's so much things to say, but it's really interesting to hear. And I mean, in a way, what I'm hearing is that you're actually in quite a dream situation. It might not seem like it when you're in it, but I mean, you have a Green Party that is, I mean, not huge, but shares a lot of the values, where apparently a lot of pirates are already in. Like that.
Like, not sure if that's a lot.
I'm not sure if Otto touched on this. I might have missed a minute or two at some point getting my phone, but the thing is that since the very first years of the pirate movement and pirate party here in Finland, there have been people sort of like getting out and joining the Greens. Like that's been a fairly steady stream along the years. There have been some people doing the reverse actually also, but that's way fewer. And this actually like apparently this got to a point at some point, I think in the early like last decade, that like there's this one blog post that I keep thinking about when this topic comes up, where some like former green active former active member of the Green Party complained about the way that like the Green Party has been sort of like, I don't know, infiltrated or like taken over by, like it's been infiltrated by the pirate ideology, and I just find that hilarious.
There were a couple of
it's completely
couple
hilarious.
of people like as I mentioned, there was this split that there were some quite pro-pirate people and or who shared similar views and some anti-pirate people in Greens, and some of those anti-pirate people actually got so mad that they left the Green Party because of the so-called invasion of pirate ideology, which didn't it wasn't actually about people, like specific people in sort of invading the party. It was just that they were mad about the fact that some people felt that these pirate agendas are actually okay. So that was basically an ideological thing, but it was fairly small number of persons who were involved in it in the Greens.
But
yeah,
I mean,
it's always funny when like pirates or like the pirate ideology is like viewed as something like so subversive or insidious that it's like worth getting upset about. Like it's getting more popular. I just can't get over how funny it is. Like it's so funny to me.
Let me ask a question. I just need to ask Kringlan. Existensberättigande, vad fan heter det på engelska? Är det right to exist?
Maybe reason for existence.
Okay, yeah. Does the pirate movement in Finland currently have a right to exist? Is there a place on the political palette for them?
Right. This is the like even in English, this is like that one French term. Like I just can't into French. Like personne d'etat or something.
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah.
What? Kringlan, give it to me in text and I shall Google it.
Yeah, we can like put it up on the stream view for everyone to stare at.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna.
Exotic Romance languages. Just a second, I'm going to like see if I can do something about the fact that I'm being swallowed by the darkness.
Yeah, I actually noticed that. It's like, are you gonna scare me now? Gonna pop up.
There we go. Halo. I think it looks pretty piratey with the light off, to be honest. But it's good.
Raison d'être, that is actually translated to existensberättigande.
Yeah, it's the same.
It's there's no English for this. Why?
But why? No, but I mean, it's really interesting to hear this. I think the thing is, like, I just want to kind of continue that train of thought that I had. 'Cause everything is kind of about the same thing, and we get some comments from the chat that, you know, personally, I think we should be the more pure pirates during elections and proud of about our ideology. But I mean, if you have a close ally that is already there, I think one of the mistakes that is easy to make is ego. I think we've talked about that before, and I think it's also, I mean, we have an urgency. We know the political landscape is shifting, and ultimately it comes down to changing policy and changing politics. So I think it's always about, you know, what is the, but to me, it sounds also like what you're saying. You can take the hardcore stances the activist stances. And I also think the Pirates are unique in their ability to cater for, because in my way of seeing it, I mean, you have so many people who are identifying as right wing, but when you start talking with them and they, you know, and you can get into talking to them, and you start talking about these issues, you know, it's like the journey that Joe Rogan has made. You know, it's kind of fun to see him. You know, now on the last time he talked with Ben Shapiro, he's fucking grilling Ben Shapiro. You know, and it's interesting to see that, because I think there are so many things that are actually in common, and I think the Pirate Party is also having a kind of a unique ability to open up people's minds, being perhaps not taking stance in too many of these identity political questions. If that makes any form of sense, you know what I mean? It has a possibility of being a bridge that I think older parties doesn't have that capacity, and some of them are taking hopeless old positions on cases that just won't attract young people no matter what, you know? Maybe that's...
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point, because I think that actually the Greens could have that kind of role, because sort of in between the left and right wing parties in some ways, because I think the Finnish Green Party hasn't allied itself as clearly with the left than most other Green parties in Europe. I mean, it's still more left than right, of course, but not as much left wing as I think some other Green parties. But yes, I understand the point. That I think when I was still in the Pirate Party, I think that was what I at least tried to do, was this idea that the Pirates shouldn't should, as you mentioned, try to bridge that gap somewhat.
Yeah, but and obviously Finland is different, but you know, the Swedish Greens are completely hopeless in the sense that they tend to fulfill the role that the right keeps wanting them to play, if that makes sense. They can point at them and say crazy, you know, green people. You know what I mean? Like, and they you know, they just want so much immigration, and they want this and this and that, and they want to have 1,000 bathrooms and yada yada yada. I mean, all of it is kind of bullshit, right? But they do enough of it to make it kind of, you know, they do enough of these really missteps. Also, when it comes to the actual green policies, to mean it's just really hard to trust. You know, again, also flip-flopping on issues when they're in power, changing their mind about things that are important to younger voters. Like, you can't just say you're going to do that and then do that. But the political landscape is different. Do you think how has the Finnish Greens handled that? Maybe I should ask that first. How are you going to make sure that you're actually able to change policy and not getting sucked into power?
Well, you know, I'm not sure if I'm the best person to answer that from the inside, but you know, of course, because, for example, currently we are a part of a coalition government, and if we didn't form that coalition government, there would be a right-wing government. So, I mean, there will always be tough choices, and I think then the question becomes about what are the utmost priorities that can't be compromised about it. And I think at the moment those are the environment issues, and there is currently a heated discussion about whether the Greens should actually continue to be in the current coalition government because of the environment issues, and whether the government is doing enough about those. And I think in the following months that discussion will happen in public. So I mean, it's constantly, you have to be critical constantly and see whether you are doing good job you're supposed to do.
Yeah, and yeah, where to start again? This has been pretty noticeable since I interact, or I spend a lot of time with climate activists, especially young ones, and the level of disillusionment with all of the establishment parties, and we're probably getting, at least when it comes to some people, we're already getting to disillusionment with the entire system, the political system. But yeah, mostly disillusionment with the mainstream, like the establishment parties, and especially the current government, which is supposedly, it's like center left. It's mostly like actual left-wing parties plus the Greens, and then there's the spoiler of the then there's the center party, like the agrarian party, so spoiling all of it. But even despite that, like they've just been really really huge disappointment, like when it's come to like all the climate action that was promised during the campaign. I mean, the climate movement at large, especially like with the help of the sort of new wave of environmental activists, managed to raise make climate one of the major themes of the elections last spring. And yeah, we gotta basically, like, when it comes to climate questions, we basically got the best possible configuration for the for our government coalition that we could have had with the election result we got. So, and now people are going like, is this really the best we can do? Is this really the best they can do? Like, can we not do any better than this within our current system? And there's just so much disappointment and like complete disillusionment.
Can I ask you, just quickly, speaking of that, I mean, specifically after Corona, but I think most people have known for quite a long time. I mean, our social democrats, they're not socialists. They are not even left. They're neoliberal corporatists, you know, which I think is painfully obvious to us right now. As I'm not sure if you saw the latest Swedish news, they paid Facebook and Amazon to come here and settle here. They don't have to pay any energy tax. And it turns out...
No. They only have to pay 3% of the energy tax.
Sorry, 3%.
I've seen and heard some of that, and it's just so depressing that I haven't like looked all that much into it. But yeah, we probably should be taking some, at least like paying some attention to it, in case the tech giants suddenly, at some point, realize that Finland exists.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that they won't. But yeah, we're going to have to be really like ready to rally around that issue if that happens.
Well, I'm verified on Twitter, so thanks for
that. Yeah, you the man. That's why they came here. They saw like, Otto is verified. Let's settle there. No, I was thinking to add on that, because you know what happened. I'm not sure if you followed, but this is a collaboration now again between the moderates, the right-wing party, and the Social Democrats. Because it was started during their term, and it was finalized during the Social Democrats' turn. And not only that, a lot of them now work as lobbyists for this organization. And they're not even hiding it, you know? It's not like they go like, they're not even ashamed of it. This is the way they're actually talking. They're honest to God thinking this is okay. And this, I believe, may be one of the big problems with Sweden, is that they've been in power for a long time, and they're conflating power. They just don't have any ideology. Whatever you can do to earn more money, that's correct. And it's more like a neoliberal kind of stance. But thinking about how it works in in Finland, you know, do you feel like there is still values that people keep within these old parties? I mean, are they really like, you know, are they misguided or corrupt? You know, it's maybe the question.
I guess that depends on which values you're looking at. I mean, they have managed to revert some of the like shittier stuff that the previous government did. The previous one was pretty right wing, and they seem to be making progress on a bunch of things that they sort of got elected in on, such as like the extension of like mandatory schooling by 3 years, 3 years, and so they've just like completely failed on some issues, and it's basically up to you whether you think those issues are like pivotal or critical enough that it warrants like just trashing the existing parties.
But at least it's
I
not
personally
blatant
kinda do.
corruption. It's not the same, like that kind of pretty obvious. It's more
Yeah,
a
I mean,
general disillusionment.
Yeah, the revolving door thing and like political nominations, all that. Like we've had this like unholy trinity of like three major parties that used to just like cycle through in the government, like forming coalitions for a good while, and it was only there's just like just these three parties without which not a single government has been formed for like as long as anyone can remember. So of course there's like a lot of systemic bullshit that that's made people turn to like alternatives and might still like drive people towards alternatives if some are actually presented like yeah if
Well, I think
decent
sorry.
ones are presented, it just we've seen the whole populist uprising or already, as Otto said, we got that a bit earlier than most European countries. So we're sort of operating on at least like in a different point of like the waveform, I guess.
Yeah, well, I don't think most people who are involved in politics are corrupt in any way. I think most people are very genuinely in it for the values they genuinely hold, but of course every person has their different backgrounds, and on the whole I don't think most people involved in politics are that deeply informed about most issues, because and I think it's somewhat impossible to be extremely informed on many issues because the world has become more complicated. So, but yeah, I do think that most people involved in politics, whether mainstream parties or non-mainstream parties, are in it for genuine reasons, so to speak.
But yeah, I personally like in general, I think that like talking about like specific corrupt politicians, unless you're in like unless your situation is more like maybe some of the like for instance some of the Eastern European countries where there's actually like this strongman authoritarian who actually is sort of like the thing you have to go for if you want any kind of change to happen. But in general, I don't find it like you can raise if they're like particularly egregious examples or cases of corruption or just some questionable shit going on. You can raise like individuals as like examples of that, like try to make examples or like make them into symbols of it if that fits your agenda. But if we're thinking of like how to fix corruption, that's always systemic. It's never about individual people. It's always about like making the system more corruption proof, like changing things so that like this stuff doesn't end up happening. It's not about individual people. There's, as long as the system like providing certain kinds of opportunities or putting people in certain kinds of situations where it's just like where people just for whatever reason like overwhelmingly or at least like reasonably often choose like the wrong thing to do. That's what we need to go for, not like talk of like individual shitty people.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. It's interesting to hear because I think in Sweden. I mean this is just my kind of guess. I when I left Sweden, this is like 2008. I think a lot of Swedish politicians were naive. You know, like the way that I saw them treating things was with a naivete. You know, and it's also like Swedish companies abroad who I saw and followed the way that they deal with other cultures and you know, kind of the growth of international capital. I thought was pretty, you know, and we have a good, you know, thing from the chat now. Icarius Natarius says you can be genuinely corrupted. This means that though the best of intentions doesn't matter if the course of action is corrupted. You know. And I said there too that I believe it's like I don't think in Sweden it's not corrupt because I mean obviously you should be able to go to work and for a lobby organization right after. I mean why would you otherwise be a politician? We had the liberal leaders saying that of course I'm going to promote policies directly from my previous employer. I mean she literally said that like the question was stupid. You know, I think in a way the idea that you're representing the voters have been forgotten. And the way that you're supposed to represent and defend industry is the key, you know, for a way that a lot of people actually think. And I think a lot of people in Sweden kind of generally agree with that, you know, that's like a general mentality. So maybe I'm being hard here when I use corrupt because obviously it's more that's the way I see it here. But generally Finland is still kind of different from that. Then I guess it's not that obvious, at least this type of things. I have another quick question, kind of on the topic.
Sure.
Do the parties in Finland? I mean, you said these three parties have kind of been rotating power for maybe a little bit of alarming length. Do they, you know, take responsibility for the populist party's growth? You know, do they say, hey, maybe my policies have led to this? Or is it like, oh, no, they're just hillbilly racists, you know, or stupid people?
No, of course not. Like, it's at least not like externally. I'm sure there's like discussion, always ongoing internal discussion about like what are we doing wrong or what should we be doing, and obviously they're somehow forced to consider this like new player on the field, like at least if not for any other reason than because they are literally like taking their votes to like a significant extent. And that's also actually one of the arguments why, like one justification for like going for electoral politics, even if you don't really strongly believe in the process or like the institutions, since due to how the system works, the established political parties end up, at least to some extent, just existing, like doing things doing things to ensure their continued existence. And this means in practice that if you actually want to make them upset, and if you actually want to affect the policies for the better, or just like you, whatever, like for the in a direction that you feel is desirable, then you actually, one of the, I guess, most efficient ways to do that is going to be like getting enough of their votes, or getting enough votes that they consider you a threat. That's when you start. That's when they start caring.
Mm.
I don't think I don't really have an answer for the question of right-wing populism. So
Yeah.
Well, it is a tough question.
Yeah, I'm not trying to. I don't want to overanalyze things. So
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's my expertise here. So
Yeah, yeah. Like,
yeah,
can we complicate this somehow? That's usually how
Yeah.
Kringlan starts.
yeah, no, I'm interested because I haven't seen any of the old parties kind of tackling it in a way that, hey, we fucked up. A lot of people got it worse, you know, and that's a part of our responsibility, you know, and we need to rethink some of the tenets, you know, that we used to have.
I would say the Germans.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know
yeah,
enough
but
about
it could also be about that the old mainstream parties, so to speak, moved into a political direction that left certain kind of political undercurrents unrepresented in the parliament, and that caused basically a split from the main parties. So one could argue that the mainstream parties became in some way less bad in their policies, and some of the people still believed in those worse policies and built a populist party around them. I think that's one way to look at it also. Meaning that no matter how good policies the mainstream parties implement, there will still be people who feel resentment and anger and who have certain kind of values.
Yeah, but I don't know how large the true Finns are, but also in Sweden, the Swedish Democrats are. I mean, they're scary big.
Yeah,
well, the same here, same thing
yeah.
in Finland. Yeah.
And
the second largest party.
Yeah, and I can agree with you that there will always be. I mean, there's always going to be racists. There's always going to be stupid people. I mean, yes, but there's a huge difference from accepting that there's always going to be those right-wing parties to. Well, yeah, Swedish Democrats got 17% in the last election. I mean, 17% of the Swedish population.
Well, I think the
racist.
point I'm trying to make is that I'm not sure how much the sort of self-flagellation or admitting how wrong some part, even if the mainstream parties admitted that they were wrong or something like that, I'm not sure how helpful that would be in terms of actual results and stuff like that. I think the discussion has moved past that already, and I think there's now a whole younger generation for whom the situation is basically normal, that there is these big right-wing populist parties. I still remember that they used to be a really small party, but a person who is 20 years old will not remember that time. The True Finns party has always been big during their lifetime, basically. So the discussion of how they got to be this big, I think that's sort of an old discussion already. And
yeah, well, it might be an old discussion, but it's still relevant. Like, why? Obviously, since they are like in the system, they have the resources and they can like keep perpetuating this. Like, that's how the system works. Once you're like properly in, you're in a really good place to like just keep yourself there. That's going into the whole party subsidy question and like the electoral system and everything that we discussed a week or two back. And it's just yeah, all of it, like it's all systemic. And I agree with Otto in that, like sort of like a self-flagellating, or like sort of like stopping to just dwell on past failures, or stopping to like at least like visibly or like performatively dwell on perceived failures is not like, it's not the way forward. Like it's something you can do if you feel it's necessary or useful or expedient even. But the thing that's going to get us out of this, like the only way to sort of chip away at the success of the populists, is to offer actually like viable alternatives, offer something that sort of take the wind out of their sails somehow, like address the kinds of like concerns. I hate the word in that context. The concerns and the like the sort of the address the undercurrents that they sort of occurrence in culture and in society that they represent, like accurately identify those, and somehow just provide an alternative for all those hypothetical like voters who just keep going for the process option.
I mean, maybe this is a good part for, the Greens and the Pirates. I mean, I understand that you want to focus on an issue. I mean, here in Sweden, we now have a tax on plastic bags. I mean, I can't imagine anything more stupid to do here. I mean, and this is not because I want plastic bags to be everywhere. It's just because you gotta realize there's a big working class who, during the last 30 years, have seen their lives get worse. And see their life for the kids get worse. And like not actually taking that serious, and constantly, saying, oh, we're gonna raise the tax on diesel and stuff like that. I mean, these are people that in a lot of ways are financially challenged, And it's so easy for them to talk about soy boys living in the city and all of that stuff. You're really, in many ways, kind of playing into that. And I think...
but this is true to me. A lot of it, this is true in many ways and on certain levels, but also the way that is being discussed, like this, all this, there's a like, what was the word, like economic anxiety or whatever, all these like all these concepts or terms that especially like the media in the USA came up to explain, like why Trump happened. These are like what we'd use in English, and it's to some degree like it's really reductive, since for instance, like in Finland, you can get to like 20% support by doing by just getting like the votes from like the disenfranchised poor. But that's not what's going on in here. Like the Finns party has a ton of there's been research on this. Like they have a lot of they share a lot of potential voters with, for instance, the national coalitions, which is like the main simultaneously the main neoliberal and the main conservative right-wing party here.
An upper middle class, let's say. Yeah, so basically the point is that most of the soy boys in cities are quite poor, and most of the well, I don't know most, but many of the people rambling about diesel taxation are probably more well off. I mean, there is that sort of the groups of people that are poor or don't have that a lot of money are very diverse, let's say.
Yeah, so it's kind of a false narrative that the populist, the whole populist wave has been about people, about poor people or like not that well-off people. It might very it can to some degree, like it does overlap with people getting fucked over by, just globalization. Like that's true everywhere. But the thing is that none of the, I mean, sure, the Greens to some extent, especially the left, do at least pay lip service. Like they do still use the words like, I mean, they might still speak critically of globalization or neoliberalism or whatever, but still they, in practice, like on the level of actions and like what their presence does in the system, they basically let themselves be tamed. They've just given in to the bullshit. Like they're not even trying to offer an actual alternative. It's basically just like vote for us so things won't be as shitty as they would be under those other guys. This is the same everywhere. This is the same for the like there's no actual left in the US from a European standpoint, but this is what the Democrats are doing, and that's why they keep fucking up. They're fucking up right now, despite Trump and all. And this is also sort of what unfortunately, many of the like so-called left-wing or progressive parties here in Finland have been doing. Like, at least in the way I see it, they are not really trying. They're not actually like trying to shift the discussion like in an opposite direction or even in like a properly like future-facing direction. They're just like stuck in this like what's the word, like trying to like their cell is basically just, we're going to try to slow down the seemingly inevitable the seemingly inevitable like shitty things that are going to come at us. Like we're going to like sort of slow that down, but there's no promise, there's no vision, there's nothing. It's just not even like little more than a shell of what the left or what progressives or liberals even maybe used to be back in sometime maybe last century. So they're just not trying, and that's also where I see an opening for the pirates. Like there's no again, going back to like issues being systemic, like there are obviously factors like the pressure to stay in parliament and raise your support and like get those extra representatives in the next election, that sort of does put a lid and does like restrict the space that the sort of rhetorical and like the policy space that the establishment parties are operating in. And that's why we really do need like outside alternatives, like some like others who are actually willing to like go all out and like say the radical thing or say the shocking thing or just propose like the thing that sounds completely utopian, because that's the only way we're going to like stretch the Overton window in the opposite direction. That's how we create the space for the establishment parties to sort of like crawl after you. Since for the past 10 years or so, the only one who's been doing that, like stretching the Overton window in any direction, has been the populist and the far right. And lo and behold, the establishment parties have been crawling after them.
Yeah,
in a
and I mean,
really pathetic and like
Mm.
disgusting way.
yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what I'm like. It's to a certain extent, regardless. And I'm not sure how it works in Finland, but just if someone went out in Sweden and say, you know, what the hell is this? How can you print this much money and give to big companies? What are you thinking? That's radical here. You know what I mean? In Corona crisis. What about just having a basic income? It's radical positions. It's crazy positions. And that's kind of that you're talking about, that kind of window. I think to a certain extent, I mean, regardless of who votes for them, maybe there aren't that many people suffering in Finland, to kind of warrant there actually being a basis for it in the. But I mean, the right-wing parties have always know. I mean, it's the classical tenet of fascism, right? Your allies are the people in power. And it's always going to be, because you don't fundamentally want to change anything, right? So you just want to have enough of a rhetoric that gets the people who are suffering pumped enough to actually change their mind. And all that is required is a stagnant, non-moving position of maybe, stagnant wages or similar wages and stuff like that for that movements to rise. At least that's what I think. Maybe we're going way off into detail here. Otto, what do you say?
It's getting a little bit, late here. So I'm not the most right guy at the moment.
I had that thought like 20 minutes ago. We're gonna ask our guests like, how are you? Are you all right? And stuff like this.
I mean, I could use a cup of tea, so if we can do like a few break for like 3 minutes, I'm going to go.
I'm actually gonna leave soon, but
so Otto can have your floor in a while. I'm going to go get the tea.
But if you had questions about the history of Finnish Pirate movement or stuff like that, which I can answer, I can
I don't have any. I mean, I'd like to know more about how the politics evolved. Like I said, in Sweden, we exploded everywhere, into every fucking direction. I mean, we were contradicting ourselves in our own policy program, for an example, and we did get to know that you didn't have that fast growth, but did the politics evolve at all?
Yeah, so the first parliamentary elections in 2011, we went with the narrow original party manifesto, and also basically, no, wait, I'm not actually 100% sure on that now, but when we still went with reasonably narrow agenda to 2011 elections. No, it wasn't. I don't think it was the original, but yeah, it's still quite narrow agenda. And then also 2012 there were municipal elections, and Pirates still had quite narrow agenda at those, and those went very poorly because most of the questions were about national politics and not about local politics. And after that, the sort of most people decided that in the Pirates that we need to broaden the topics we're discussing about, but that wasn't unanimous. That was controversial. Some people would have liked to focus on the original issues more, but the agenda became wider after that, and then it was quite stable. It has been quite stable after that. But in 2017 local elections, Pirates got 2 people elected in local councils in Helsinki and Jyväskylä, and that was the first sort of electoral success for Pirates, and the people who got elected were still campaigning with some of the core Pirate teams, but also some of the newer teams, so to speak. So I think at least if we look at the electoral success, those who got actually elected did have more a little more broader agenda than what the original pirate agenda was, but they still included some of those core things.
And I have a question as well there. I mean, maybe what would you say was the biggest, if you're gonna give some other pirate parties, regardless of, where they are in the process, what do you think that you did really well that you would like really recommend? And is there something that you would, on the other hand, don't do that,
Well, I think not. What we did well was not getting stuck with too much internal bureaucracy. So we kept the organization quite lean, so to speak, and that was, I think, one of the reasons we avoided a lot of infighting and sort of frustration over internal bureaucracy and stuff like that. I think Blackbeard handled reasonably well, so we avoided major infighting.
Okay.
But I think most other things, if I'm being self-critical here, because I was involved with all the major decisions basically for many years, I'm not sure if I can give that much good advice because in terms of getting elected at least, but the pirates did have influence on public discourse
Okay.
in Finland.
Oh, I mean,
Just by raising the issues in the media and in social media and stuff like that. I mean that's been, I think, a relative success to some extent. But
I mean,
in terms of tips how to get elected effectively, I don't think I'm in a position to give any.
But I mean, the core kind of tenets of it has to be to push policy and get it through. And, to a certain extent, like I said before, I mean, if you have been able to push the Greens into a position where they're actually relevant, in many ways, I mean, as opposed to the way they are in other countries, and taking this question seriously.
I think have been part of that, yes. Yes.
I mean, then that's a huge success, compared to many.
About success,
maybe,
I would like,
and depending where you stand on, like have these policies really been implemented? That's another thing. But yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I would like to segue this into my final question. That is, and that is the test that Finland had with basic income. I mean, we've talked some about it, not very much, but I would like to talk more about it. But we are running out of time. Everything I've read about it is that it was a failure. But when I did read the report, I mean, you could physically measure that people were happier, and I do not see how that is a failure.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Do you know?
Well, it wasn't a failure in that sense. Yeah, I think. Well, the thing is that the government that implemented that basic income experiment was a right-wing government, which included the populist party and the main right-wing party and the center party. So they didn't have a real incentive to make a really successful experiment, and that's why the focus was a bit narrow, and it sort of, in some ways, it gave a response they wanted, which wasn't that it didn't seem to be financially that much reasonable. But in terms of people being happier, yeah, I mean that is a success story in that way.
Yeah.
And I think regarding the current coalition government, the main problem with implementing basic income experiments is that the Social Democrats are in the current coalition, and they're close to employees associations, and labor movement, and the labor movement has traditionally been opposed to basic income because they're now social security schemes that are dependent on memberships in the union and stuff like that. So they're afraid of their position, and that's where they have been opposed to basic income, and that's why it's difficult to implement in.
But I mean, because to me, it sounds like you can use solidarity. Like there are so many old words that could be reused in criticism of them, and that's what the populist parties in Sweden are good at, which is worrying.
I mean, the basic income debate has been going on for a long time in Finland, and it intensifies at some points and then dies out for a bit and then rises again. And I think the discussion, whatever reforms, each time they're making any kind of reforms in social policy, the idea of the basic income is always hovering at the background, and the idea of making the social security system more simple and more accessible, that's always there, and it's affecting all reforms in some way or another, but we're still a long way from implementing actually basic income.
Interesting, and I mean, of course, it's far away, but I think it's well worth to pat yourself on the shoulder and say, I mean, 10%, it's a lot, and being able to change an established party. I mean, again, the important thing is policies that are being driven, and getting them through Parliament. It takes a long time, and I think you're in a position where the Pirate Party can take those stances, can be more aggressive, and shoot hole on some populist things, and kind of, I mean. To a certain extent, you have something that we do not have in Sweden. We have 8 parties that are for pretty much exactly the same politics. There is no difference. It's like, should we have more immigrants or less? We're talking about maybe 5,000 or 20,000. That's the difference in politics, right? That's pretty much it.
Well, I think it's promising in some ways that the right-wing government implemented any kind of a basic income experiment. I think, of course, that is something to be sure, even though it wasn't really maybe that honest, but still.
I mean, it was huge news globally.
Some kind of an experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's. I mean. The reality, as you also pointed out, is that it takes a lot of time, and I think there needs to be a more revolutionary arm of every movement. Now, that doesn't mean that you want to run out and kill people, but it means that you have to shift over to the window. So
I agree on that. Yeah. Well, people have to believe in what they say, and they have to be seen to believe.
The idealists are incredibly important to have. It's just you need to know where to use them, right? That's the thing.
Yeah, and I think the importance of sort of political imagination has been undervalued recently. And if I think, well, I know something about history. So if I think the sort of great political change is like the good ones in the 20th century, I think there was an element of political imagination, like sort of radical imagination, imagining how things actually could be different, and I think that's very much needed at the moment. But it has to be grounded on reality and on the specific circumstances in each country. You can't just copy ideas from another country with different history and stuff like that, different culture, but you need that imagination, and you have to imagine that things can be different and what they could be. So I think sometimes there is sort of the limits of the political imagination seem to be very narrow sometimes, very, very often today. So that's something that should be
So
worked on.
I have to say also we actually have 10 because we have a new show in almost 10 minutes. I didn't realize I start watching the clock now and time flies away here, obviously. But in about, well, we'll be a little bit late, but we're gonna, for those who want to check that out, we're gonna talk about arbetsförmedlingen in Sweden, the Swedish, when you lose your job, you go there, and they're pretty goddamn
Unemployment
also,
office.
problematic, yeah, to say the least. But I can say also, it's now we kind of derailed it a little bit about talking about the general, the populist parties and so on. But it would be really interesting to maybe also get you back and talk particularly about that. We talk about that a lot on Mondays normally.
We talk a lot about that on Mondays.
Yes, in Swedish.
I don't think so, Mrs. Utrikesminister.
But let me just say like this. All of you who are in the chat, please join our Discord. Press that follow button. It actually helps us a lot. And
yes, and I do know that we have a lot to talk about with our Finnish friends. Because right now on the PTVEU, we're doing the country rounds. I'm trying to get a hold of a new country to talk to every week. And hopefully we will, after that, be able to get back to the Finnish. But I do believe I will invite at least Maja to some of our Swedish shows and swatch them to English because, you've been with us before and there's always been a good show. Maybe we can even convince Maja to host a Finnish show. Who knows?
Yeah.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, no, I'm getting a bit worried.
No, but
it's okay. I've been meaning to try something out at some point anyway. So I even have a green screen back there.
That's great. But yeah, I mean it's and I'm sorry about this as well. Normally the thing is we're trying to do everything now at the evenings, which kind of squishes our schedule a little bit because obviously we can float away and terrorize people for hour-long conversations.
I just wonder, now that I think about it, why we have a Swedish show right after the only English show we have.
I mean, it's not good that we have this. It should be on Tuesdays, really, but it's gonna work out.
Yeah.
We're gonna plan and learn.
Yeah, we're learning, we're swapping around, we're switching, that's what we do.
Yeah.
But I think it's great to have these kinds of discussions, especially comparing stuff with other countries. And I think this kind of thing happens too little.
Yeah, way too little.
Yeah.
But yeah, it might actually be a good idea to have a Finnish segment since you Swedes are oppressing the people with Finnish ancestry.
What?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You're ruining you're oppressing them. You're forbidding them from using their own language at school.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds.
You're trampling their language rights. This is a fact.
So you mean that it is a language that thing you do? It is a language, you mean?
Oh, Oh my God.
Sorry,
okay, this is actually a conversation we should have, but we are not going to get started.
Looking like a true colonial overlord.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Otto is stupid southern Swedish people. They don't get it.
Fucking
anyway.
Swedes, man. Fucking monarchists.
Yeah, chat. I know we want to talk about Åland. I want to talk about Åland as well, but we have another show in 6 minutes now.
Yeah.
So
it's going to become a pirate island. It's already been decided.
We've taken this over now. Nobody's coming on. It's only Finns from now on.
Okay. Well, I have somebody that we need to get Maja in touch with at least, because I have somebody who we're gonna make Åland piratey, and I have some solutions for that.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Anyhow,
yes,
that is a good.
Our message has reached someone since last time. That's awesome.
Mm.
We haven't been screaming into the void. There's going to be a Pirates of Åland.
Pirates of Åland 1, 2, and 3. The movie.
Yes.
Great. Well,
and then the fourth and fifth one that nobody speaks of and that don't exist.
yeah, it's like they lost the good actors. Anyway, I thank you everyone who's been watching. Thank so much to the both of you for being here. It's really helpful. A lot of interesting things, and like you say, it's so good to hear. I mean, I hope we'll be able to get back to you both. Just also even more about strategy. I mean, we're kind of talking about it on top level, but I think it's really important to talk about the particular strategy. You know, kind of going down into organization and stuff like that. And we didn't really cover that today. But
Yeah.
It's super interesting, and sorry about that little derail, but it's interesting for me to hear these things, and I'm just asking obviously what I'm interested in, selfish like that.
Yeah, I'm just going to have to start coming into these discussions with an agenda of my own, so I can like just derail the discussions.
Yeah, this is the ultimate
actually makes
derailing show.
sense.
Yeah, but
But yeah, I have to close it now. We're gonna prepare for the next show in 4 minutes. It's gonna be late, but but thank you so much, and thank you, chat, and we'll see. We're gonna be live in Swedish soon. Bye bye. Till then.
Kuken ute. Nej, stoppa in den igen, Miss Midget, är du snäll.
Entering orbit, final destination. Reaching the peak of a life of preparation. Stellar, static, this distortion. As you control my actions in third person. Then comes the sun. Tell me who I have become. Harder for the system. Freedom can be lost. Don't be a victim. Harder for the system. I'm guilty of lies by our submission.